Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from Gunnerblog. James, a very goodly morning to you.
Goodly morning, Andrew. How you doing?
I'm all right, thanks. I'm all right. Had a quite nice weekend, some nice food, watched The Godfather. It was all very pleasant. Enjoyed the football. You know, Sunday was a good day for Arsenal. Arsenal women winning the North London derby 5-0. Manchester United's woes continue, unfortunately, though, at the hands of Tottenham. And
what can you do?
Swings and roundabouts.
On balance, we'll take it.
Yeah, we can live with it, I think. You know, we don't want them to make a habit of winning, but in this particular context, I think we can just about tolerate it. I think that's the right way of putting it.
Yeah, and let's face it, they're not exactly breathing down our necks. Still 23-point gap between the two North London sides.
23 points, holy shit. Like, I knew it was bad, but
we don't even do the kind of mind the gap stuff anymore. Do you know what I mean? All that stuff. It's beyond that point.
It's not even
a gulf.
It's a chasm. It's a chasm. Goddamn chasm. How was your weekend?
It was good, thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, Arsenal got it off to a nice start on the Saturday. Just changes the whole complexion of your weekend, really.
Yeah.
And I feel like we were due some positivity, some good news after the week that was.
Yes, of course, the Kai Havertz surgery and hamstring and everything else, which, you know, led to a lot of debate and discussion and worry about going into this game. And I think that's, you know, certainly a big part of what we'll talk about today. Like, there was a point where I was thinking, I think I sent a text to Lewis going, this is maybe the most 12:30 kickoff in history. You know, that early 12:30 Saturday kickoff where, for whatever reason, whether it's the crowd, whether it's the time of day, if it's come because we've had a little bit of a break, I don't know. But often these fixtures, they lack a sort of energy, don't they? They just sort of go along. Like the first half, we can talk about it in a minute, but it was just like, well, that was a half of football that happened.
Yeah, and I mean, as much as I say, you know, the result kind of made my weekend, I felt very differently at half time. You know, that first half was pretty turgid stuff. And I suppose maybe a factor in that is that we simply hadn't played for quite a long time. And then on top of that, I think you've got the fact that we were sort of learning to play in a different way on the fly without having had Kai Havertz there to start. I mean, there was absolutely no debate really about what the front three might be. It was just unequivocal. It was the three attackers that we had available.
Yeah.
But they're all very different, physically at least, to Kai Havertz. And I think that meant 45 minutes. I think, yeah, maybe it would be being kind to call it 45 minutes of adaptation, but that is sort of what it felt like.
Yeah. I think what struck me at halftime was, like, you could look at that front three and you could go into the individuals and you could go into them as like a collective, as a trio, as a sort of group that are working together. And you can critique that, right, in all kinds of ways. Some of it was very good. Some of it was not so good. But I think where my big concern was at halftime was more about what was happening behind them. You know, I don't think Trossard or Sterling in particular was particularly effective from an attacking perspective in that first half. But I also felt like we were just a bit laboured, a bit pedestrian. I think Arteta mentioned that in the post-game press conference. He didn't particularly like the way that we played in that first half, and I understand that. So while I think you can have those reservations about that front three, there was a bit more going on behind.
Agreed. I think it was a pretty poor first half performance from Arsenal and a very poor game generally. I think we ended the half with, 4 shots, 1 on target. I think we had 1 corner and got a second one in stoppage time at the end of the half. Ethan Nwaneri was the sort of bright spot, wasn't he?
Yeah.
You know, even in that first half, he was the guy who carried some threat to Leicester.
Yeah, for sure. He was the standout guy. I think maybe Martin Odegaard as well, at least, was trying to make things happen, those little scoopy passes that he's so capable of, but it didn't quite fall for Trossard a couple of times. But yeah, Nwaneri was, by some distance, Arsenal's best player, the most exciting player, the player who, if a breakthrough was going to come, you felt like he was going to be involved in some way.
I agree. I think Yeah, he was really the player that you're looking to, which at 17 is amazing and arguably slightly worrying, but there you go. He just was that good, and every touch he took had such composure to it. It just, it was really, really impressive to see how he is stepping up.
Tell me why you think that's worrying.
Only because he's a 17-year-old player, and I think it's fair to expect more support from the senior players around him. I think the likes of Trossard or Sterling, I think they need to be the guys kind of supporting him and easing the load and the pressure on him. Whereas if that genuinely is the front three we're going with for the foreseeable future, I'm sure we'll discuss that. I mean, he is the guy I think you're really looking to be the difference maker. Maybe that's just unavoidable. Maybe that's just great talent. I don't know.
I mean,
what do you think?
The precociousness of youth, perhaps, as well, where, you're not, let's say, weighed down by expectation and pressure or responsibility. And I'm not saying that he isn't capable of that, because I think you could say or argue that he is the guy who took on the most responsibility from an Arsenal perspective in that first half in terms of what he was trying to do. The variation in his game, I think, was really interesting. He didn't just do that thing where he comes back on his left foot, and we'll get into the nuts and bolts of his performance and his contribution, I think. So maybe it's that, I think as well, if we say Trossard, given what we have available to us, is our best option at centre forward, if we can call it centre forward when he's playing there. I don't know that he plays it in the same way as Havertz, obviously. I still think he is kind of out of position there as well, which, I'm not making an excuse for him or anything like that, but I just think when you try and analyse the performance of those individuals, Nwaneri feels like he's in his best position, or certainly a position that really suits him. Trossard can do a job there, and Sterling obviously is a different conversation because of where he is in his career and what he's capable of. So maybe it was just that. I don't know. He's relishing the opportunity to play. Perhaps feels a little bit like throughout this season he could have played a bit more, and now that he's got a run in the team, he's determined to take that chance.
I mean, he won't be worried about it. That's for me to sit here and sort of wring my hands and worry about responsibility and minutes and all those sorts of things. But he won't care. No. He'll just be delighted to be playing. And you mentioned the position he's playing. He looks like he's played there his whole life. He's incredibly well suited to it. And the way in which he's adapted to it, I know I'd done it a little bit in the academy, but the way in which he's adapted to it has been quite amazing. As for Trossard, I still think Trossard can... We've seen Trossard do really well in that central role, but maybe it's been in teams with, Gabriel Martinelli or Bukayo Saka, players who are going to maybe run beyond him a bit more, maybe go into central areas a bit more.
Also with, a big, tall, left-footed left eight, usually somewhere quite close to him.
Yes, exactly. So... I think it can work, but at the moment, or certainly on Saturday, it didn't really. And when Trossard switched out to the left, he made a really telling contribution, didn't he? So that kind of tells its own story. I
think we did, looking back at the game and looking back at some of the moments, I think we did try and give him that support in the shape of Declan Rice.
He got forward a lot.
He did get forward a lot. And actually, the conversation around the goal is quite interesting. When it eventually came, people are saying, well, look, now Arsenal have something to aim for in there. But if you look in that first half, he plays that exact same cross twice in the first half from more or less the same position. Both times he's aiming it towards Declan Rice. I think the first time it got cleared by a defender. The second time Rice didn't quite get the header right. He headed it like a long way wide despite getting there first. So that was something that we were trying to do, but I think, and we'll come to it, obviously, I think maybe the balance is just a little bit better with Trossard on the left and somebody else with a bit of height and a bit of presence in the middle, in the shape of Merino,
One of my major frustrations about the first half was how many times we were caught offside.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of those things where it makes you realise or take for granted, I suppose. You realise that you do take for granted how good the movement of Martinelli, Saka, and I guess Havertz is as well, because it felt like every time we came forward, we were offside. It was taking me back to the days of Theo Walcott and Emmanuel Adebayor, getting themselves 2 or 3 yards the wrong side of their man on occasion. And there's nothing more frustrating as a fan than when an attack breaks down over an unnecessary offside decision. But I think that that is on the attackers and their movement. I also think it perhaps shows we were holding on to the ball a little bit longer than ideal. Just being a bit slow to release it, which I know has been one of our bad habits in some of our less convincing performances this season.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, the balance, it's not just on the attacking players, although I think a couple of times Sterling and Trossard had the ability to look across the line and hold their run and didn't really do it well enough. And look, with all due respect, I don't think this is the most accomplished defensive unit in the Premier League at Leicester, No,
it's not. It's not. So that was slightly irritating. And I also think that for, as much as we dominate possession, you could make a case that Leicester had the 2 most threatening moments of the half, with and Ndidi had a volley and a header as well, didn't he? Yeah,
it was one of those. I was watching the highlights again, and the volley, obviously Raya gets behind it very well, but you can see Gabriel throw himself in the direction of the ball. It's one of those where it could easily have gone in off Gabriel, that one. I don't think the shot itself was that dangerous, but the potential for a deflection certainly was. And then that header right at the end of the first half where he got there first, flashed the header wide. I think we allowed Leicester too much time on that left-hand side to get the cross in as well.
Yeah, and the way the camera angle was, you sort of couldn't see quite where that header was going. I had visions of it flashing into the far corner, but fortunately it didn't, and we got away with it. There were some nearly moments for Leicester in the game in the second half as well. So at half time, I was pretty concerned, actually. Kind of all my worst fears were coming home to roost, in that I just felt like Arsenal looked a bit like a team who didn't quite know how to attack in this game, didn't quite know how to approach it. And if it weren't for Nwaneri, it would look pretty blunt at that point.
Was the second half markedly better in your opinion, or was it quite a lot more of the same?
I don't know. It felt better because we scored 2 goals.
But until we scored 2 goals, we didn't score any goals. It was the 80th minute, and I'm sure you and everyone else listening to this was getting pretty fucking anxious at that point. I know I was. So. I was trying to come to terms with 10 minutes to go before we scored. My mind was going to the okay, it's a point away from home. That's not great. This is Leicester. We should be beating. I know we've got problems, but we should be able to maybe do a bit more against a team like this. And I was trying to sort of come to terms with the idea of dropping more points. And it was really, really making my stomach hurt a bit because of what had happened during the week with Liverpool. That are we going to let another opportunity to close the gap on Liverpool pass us by after they drop points in the derby? Are we going to sort of buckle at the first hurdle? That's fall at the first hurdle, I think. Mixing my metaphors there. So, I accept that we were probably the better team. I think we were in the second half the better team overall, but, things that happened in the game, we had a couple of sliding doors moments, didn't we? Where I think with about 20 minutes to go, it started to open up a little bit and things started to happen. Nwaneri hit the bar. And then there was that big moment.
Effort,
my goodness. I could see Trossard, I think it was Trossard was looking for the pass, which I can understand, but Nwaneri only had one thing on his mind, didn't he? When he came back inside, he really backs himself from those positions, and you can understand why.
Yeah, incredible shot. I mean, I didn't notice on first viewing that it come quite as close as it did, just clipped the top of the crossbar, but that's that position where he's so deadly. just outside the box, off to the right-hand side, bending it in towards the far corner. Would have been a really beautiful goal. And frankly, a goal he probably deserved on the day, but he had important contributions still to come.
Yes, he did. Now, there was a big moment from a Leicester perspective as well, where Myles Lewis Skelly absolutely bailed Thomas Partey out, because Partey gave the ball away in midfield. If you look at this, Timber's knackered. Partey, can't get back. He's trying to get back near Ayew, doesn't get back, doesn't do a lot really to try and block that cross. It's an amazing piece of defending from Lewis Skelly to nick that ball behind, because otherwise it's a tap in for De Cordova-Reid. And I think we would have been in significant trouble had that gone in.
Yeah, it's the moment Leicester have been playing for the whole game, really. And it was a bit troubling how easily they broke on us and ran away from us. My very controversial opinion is that this is not that good a piece of defending.
Hang on.
I think it's just like, I think if he doesn't get there, everyone's asking questions about it. Do you know what I mean? I think your fullback's got to do that, what he does there. It's important.
I think that is a hot take from you. I think when you look at this again, yeah, he has to get there. That's his job at the back post, to be the defender. And if, someone comes in around the back and scores a goal, you're asking questions of any fullback in that situation. No two ways about it. But he has to sort of adjust his standing foot to make that clearance. It's not like, he's perfectly set up to just nick the ball behind. He's sort of half stumbling and takes another hop forward. Maybe there's a touch of good fortune, but I don't know. I think he times it perfectly. He gets to the ball. I don't know what more you can ask from a defender in that position.
I think it looks great because it just avoids the attacker. But there's lots of ways he could not hit it towards the attacker. So I think it's fine, but I think it's a classic example of academy player does something and everyone's like, wow. I love Lewis Skelly.
I know you do.
But I just am I was sort of watching the analysis of that being yeah, it's important and it's really nearly a goal, but I'm not sure it was sensational. Just my opinion.
Okay. I feel like you're being a little bit harsh, because I think he does have to adjust his feet really quickly. And I think that is, that's not easy to do in that context. So I think I'm going to give him a bit more credit for that than you're willing to.
I'm sure everybody will. But yeah, if he doesn't do that, I think we're all criticising him.
Sure, but he does.
Yeah, yeah. But that means that's what's expected. Do you know what I mean? It's not I don't know. He didn't put it in the top corner from 30 yards, or it wasn't Well, anyway, I've said what I think. I think okay. It's a good piece of defending, but not much better than that.
All right. Okay, fair enough. Let's move on then. And Nwaneri picks up the reins. I think it's fair to say at this point, there's that shot with his right foot. If you're a defender, if you're that defender, I don't know which defender it was. I'm going to have a look at it here again. Let me see. I've got the video here. It's the Blondie lad. Is it Christensen?
Yes.
I think. Probably. So if you're Christensen in that position and Nwaneri is driving towards the box, I think in your mind as a defender, you're saying, I cannot let this guy onto his left foot. Whatever happens
he's just shown you what will happen if you do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I cannot let this guy. So body shape, he's. I mean, that's what they say. Force him onto his right foot, force him on the outside, make them use their weak foot. That's what you're taught as a defender. But fuck, I didn't know he had that in his locker with his right foot. I know he's willing to go on the outside and put a cross in, and we saw that a few times in the first half, in particular, where he did that. He does that little step over thing he does and drives and has this burst over a couple of yards to get beyond. But I didn't, that's very different, from being able to shoot with that kind of power and accuracy with your right foot, which I didn't know that he had that in his locker. And defenders are now going to be like, oh, fuck. I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, he's shown it with his crossing a little bit.
Yeah.
When he's gone on the outside, it's not hit and hope off his right foot.
Yeah.
There was one in the first half, I think, where he went to the byline and absolutely sort of, thumped one across goal. So he is capable, but that was a brilliant effort. And, I can't really believe he's come out of the game without a goal, to be honest, given the threat that he offered and the two efforts that he had.
What a shot. I mean, the power of that with his right foot. So, next time he's bearing down on goal, defenders are going to be thinking, well, I can show him onto his left foot or I can show him onto his right foot. Either way, I've got a fucking problem here.
Yeah. I remember Bukayo Saka, when he first broke through, I feel like there was a little bit of time before we began to see him go on the outside, that kind of effectiveness. Almost it was when defenders started getting wise to him that he added that to his game. I remember us talking about him adding that. So for Nwaneri to be doing that straight off the bat at 17 demonstrates the sort of level of ability we're talking about here. By the way, in amidst all this, the substitution was made.
Yes.
Right? Raheem Sterling came off for Mikel Merino. I just wondered what your reaction to that was. I mean, and given the paucity of other options.
I mean, it felt like the most obvious option. I think he was always going to go to a senior player before he went to Nathan Butler Oyedeji, who's the only other attacking player on the bench. So I that didn't surprise me. Certainly Sterling coming off didn't surprise me, and Merino coming on didn't surprise me. It did give us a bit more presence in that centre forward position with Trossard.
Were you surprised at all that he put Merino in at centre forward?
No, because I don't know what else there was. It was either stick Merino at centre forward or put Merino in the Rice position and put Rice at centre forward. I don't really know what else he could have done from an attacking perspective,
Yeah.
To rebalance anyway, when you've got that front three, you take Sterling off, you don't put Merino out on the left, you move Trossard there and put the big man in the mixer, if you like. So it wasn't a surprise to me. I was curious to see how it would work. And I think maybe within a couple of minutes we saw, was it Timber who put a cross in and it only just got away from Merino at the back post? And
yes,
we're in an emergency situation, right? No two ways about it. Without Havertz, without Martinelli, without Saka, without Jesus, we're in emergency option scenario with our centre forwards. But I think, despite the fact that, I'm sure he and maybe Mikel Arteta would admit we haven't yet seen the best of Mikel Merino, or certainly the level that he would like to bring to the club. We haven't seen that consistently since his arrival for various reasons. But I think what we can say is that he has demonstrated an ability to get into those kinds of positions in the penalty area with the timing of his runs, whether it's in the air or whether it's, at the back post to apply a finish. We've seen that from him in patches this season. So I can understand why, in this context, the manager decided, well, this is the best option. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. It's interesting because I saw it being discussed a bit in the build-up to the game, and there was a bit of a split on it. Some people thought it was kind of quite fanciful, pie in the sky, but when you look at what Arteta had at his disposal, it sort of made the most sense. And if you look at Merino's attributes as a player, it's probably the closest thing Arsenal have to a sort of Havertz-like forward. Mm-hmm. What surprised me slightly was after the game, I don't know if I'm to believe this or not, but both Arteta and Merino basically saying, no, we didn't work on it in training, and they told me on the morning of the game that I might be playing there.
Yeah, we had a couple of questions about that, actually. Somebody was saying, do you think...
just a fib?
Yeah, exactly. Do you think it's real? Surely... It
seems crazy for someone as prepared as Arteta.
I can't really believe that they didn't even float that as an idea. Like, we might need to throw you on with 20 minutes to go.
Yeah. See
if you can get us a goal. We'll play you up front. It's all well and good sort of saying to a guy on the morning of a game, right, we might play you up front today, This is where we need
videos of Alan Shearer.
Exactly, yeah.
Go on YouTube and put in R9 Phenomeno.
But that's what I mean. Like, there's the way when a substitution is made these days, the assistant is there with the fucking iPad going, now you go here, and then when he go, they're giving them all the instructions while they're, doing up their socks before they come on. So there's a level of preparation that goes into tactics and systems and things like that, right? That I find it impossible to believe that they didn't have at least one serious conversation at the training ground about what they would want from him in that role, where he's supposed to be in relation to the other players. When the ball is here, you need to be there. Those kinds of things, which if you're not naturally a centre forward, they don't come naturally to you. So you need to be instructed. And so I don't believe it, actually, I have to say. I actually don't. Do you?
I can't believe it. It seems so wildly out of character for Arteta. And we know he's very guarded about preparation. So maybe it's something they decided on. It's just quite odd that both Merino and Arteta would sort of talk about it in those terms. Do you know what I mean? Unless they got together and got their story straight, which I think, again, feels like a bit of a leap. So I don't know. Maybe they practiced it informally without sort of heaping too much pressure on him. It's obviously something the players have been talking about, because Arteta said pre-game that William Saliba had kindly volunteered to play up front.
I like that, actually, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's another interesting dynamic to it, that I was like, I wonder if Merino's like, I wonder if his reaction of you're playing up front is, oh no, I don't understand the positional play involved. I don't know a lot about pressing shapes. Or is he like, playing up front? That sounds brilliant. Do you know what I mean? Like, the opportunity of a lifetime, what every footballer wants. I genuinely have no idea, but he certainly did well enough. I mean, there was a moment as soon as he came on, I think, where he brought down a long ball, just incredibly straightforward centre forward stuff, held it up, knocked it onto somebody else. I think actually when Nwaneri hit the post, he had an involvement in that move too, doing a bit of hold up play. And you're sort of just like, I mean, it is that, I don't want to say easy. I don't want to, after the Lewis Skelly debacle, I don't want to be accusing things of being easy for everyone. But it is that simple sometimes. You know? You've got football can be quite a straightforward game in moments. And bringing on a big guy who's got a penalty box threat and can hold the ball up, it helped. Yeah,
sometimes football is a simple game. You're right. I just went back to have a look there as Odegaard just kind of hoofs the ball up in the air. And Merino comes back into our half, takes a touch, feeds Rice to Nwaneri, and Nwaneri hits the post.
It's classic centre-forward stuff, really.
Yeah, I if you're Mikel Merino and you're asked to do this job, I'm not saying it's like a free hit, because you've got a job to do, and he fucking did it on Saturday, by the way. You've got responsibilities, but I think at the same time, everyone understands this is not your natural position. And there is a reasonable expectation that, your ability to influence games won't be as consistent as it would be if it was your natural position, right? So there's I don't know if it's free of pressure or whatever, but it worked. It really worked on Saturday. I think, as well, maybe just bringing on Calafiori at the time that we did was useful too, just to give us a bit of legs, a bit of...
Well, after that shocking clearance from Lewis Skelly, he was hauled off, wasn't he, after that? He was hauled off.
Yeah, given a
good
talking
fans cheered his substitution from the away end. No, I think it's an interesting one with Calafiori. Every game, I find myself not quite sure who Arteta's going to pick. And I think when he looks at those two players, he really sees them as kind of sharing that 90 minutes. I know Lewis Skelly is nominally the starting player, but I think it is really close between those two. And I don't think we get weaker when we bring Calafiori on for the final 20 minutes.
No, I think in some ways Calafiori is an attacking sub.
Yeah, that's a great shout, yeah.
When options are as limited as they are at this moment in time, when we don't have anybody for the front three, really, I think Calafiori is an attacking sub because of the way that he plays.
Got a different dimension to his game in terms of how he runs forward, how he runs through people, and a willingness to get right into the penalty box as well.
I loved his knee slide after the Merino goal. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
He's like
he's very like sort of photogenic.
Yeah,
on the pitch. Everything he does looks good, and I mean that. Like as an athlete, I know he's had his injury troubles, but like when he runs, your eye goes. He's a player your eye is drawn to. For sure.
He's a lot of fun to watch, and a lot of fun to have in the team as well. And an effective sub. So let's do the goals then.
Yeah.
Nwaneri with the cross that we mentioned already that he tried to find Rice with in the first half. It didn't quite come off there. I think this delivery is just a little bit better, and I think as well the position of Mikel Merino between the two defenders. I'm not saying it makes it easy for Nwaneri to find him, but I feel like the penalty box was a bit more crowded in the first half when he was trying to find Rice with that cross, that there were more Leicester defenders around. Maybe they were a bit tired. They were pulled out of shape a little bit. But if you look, he's off the back of Wout Faes there. And I think is it Koulibaly who was on as a substitute at right back. He's watching Merino, but he's also got Trossard over his shoulder as well. So he can't really commit. The quality of the delivery is just fantastic, and he's a very good header of the ball, as we saw in the Euros. What a big moment. What a big goal for Arsenal in the context of this season.
A huge moment. My favourite moment is the little touch from Nwaneri, where he just kills the ball with the studs of his boot. Almost makes it like a dead ball, really, and then lifts that across the far post. Such a good header from Merino. I mean, for all the debate over what he offers and his role in the team, no one disputes his capacity to do that, to climb and head the ball effectively. Well-timed run as well. And the players were so happy for him, I felt. There was a lot of pointing at him and making him take the moment. I don't know if they talked about him as a potential solution to this issue in the dressing room, or if they just feel that maybe he's not had a proper crack of the whip as yet. But he's clearly very, very popular. I know everyone's popular when they score with 10 minutes to go, but I thought there was a bit more to those celebrations.
Yeah, maybe it is the fact that, he got that injury when he first came and it had a big impact on how his Arsenal career started. I think maybe it's just the fact that he seems like a really nice guy.
He does, yeah.
You saw the interview afterwards and he's talking about the fans and he was talking about, how the goals were a Valentine's gift for his wife because he forgot Valentine's Day or whatever. I mean, he was away on Valentine's Day, wasn't he? Preparing for an important game of football. But, he just comes across as a really genuine, nice guy, a real team player. He's put on, asked to do a job. No complaints. I'll get up there. I'll run around and see what I can do in that position. And of course, he comes up trumps with the opening goal and then the second goal as well, which I think is a really, really nice goal, actually. It starts at the back. Martin Odegaard does very well. Plays it through to Calafiori in midfield, takes it on out to Trossard. And the delivery of Trossard to the back post for Merino is very good. I think this is a very smart finish. It's easy to get that one wrong, I think.
I agree.
And he finishes it very well and make sure of the 3 points.
Is it me, or did Trossard produce this exact assist a few games ago? Was it against Aston Villa or something? I don't know. But
yes. Yeah, that rings a bell.
Something where he went on the outside and absolutely fizzed a left-footed cross across the box. Maybe it's for Martinelli.
It was Villa. It was the Kai Havertz goal, wasn't it, against Aston Villa?
Right.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, it shows, he can be effective, I suppose, in his proper position, and a really, 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 really good finish from Merino. I mean, I think I said this in my post-match video, but I don't know if I would back Kai Havertz in that position. It's difficult, it's sort of, he takes it kind of with his wrong foot as well. In some respects, you'd expect a lot of players to go with their right and go back across goal, but he's very left-footed, so just tucks it neatly into that near post. Looks beautiful.
Yeah. Smart movement as well, because if we talk about offside and the frustration of the first half and players being offside when they shouldn't be offside.
True.
He absolutely makes sure that he stays onside there. You can actually see him check his run and wait for the ball to come across. So, credit there as well. Just a very good goal.
Very good goal. Great reaction from Ethan Nwaneri as well, who's right behind it. And as soon as Merino tucks that ball away with such ease, his hands go to his head, almost as if he can't believe what he's seeing.
Yeah. There's a reverse angle as well with Odegaard, and he just sort of goes to his knees and is like arms in the air, like yes,
really,
yeah.
Well, they're big goals. They really are, because I know that we were talking about half time and how we felt then, and I think outside of Arsenal, outside of the fan base, probably the obituaries for our season were being written at that point in time. They've dropped more points. They've lost another opportunity to close the gap on Liverpool. This is what they're like without a striker. It's going to be a struggle from now until the end of the season. And Arsenal, I guess we kind of needed... It was a week where we really needed something to believe in.
Sure. I mean, do you think as well for the players, we've discussed it all week long, haven't we, as fans and supporters and podcasters and all that, about like, oh no, we've got no Havertz, we've got no Jesus, we've got no Saka, we've got no Martinelli. We're sort of carrying Raheem Sterling a little bit at this moment in time. And we'll talk about him more in part 2, because I've got a question. So okay, we'll deal with that in part 2. But the players themselves, you know yourself, regardless of whatever level of football you play at, when you don't have 3-4 of your best players and you go to play a game, it has an impact on you, subconsciously or otherwise. As confident as you can be in your own ability and your abilities as a team, when you're under strength, you feel it, and I think maybe to an extent that was part of why this performance played out the way it did. That there is not quite a lack of confidence, but it's hard to be fluent without, your best attacking players. So I think
absolutely
those goals and the sources of those goals, are really, really important. Merino for stepping in and scoring them. Nwaneri as a 17-year-old getting man of the match and providing the assist for the first one. Trossard out to his natural position on the left. And providing an assist as well on a day when perhaps in front of goal he didn't really produce much in terms of attacking threat.
No, and I think they will, as a group of players, derive massive confidence from this. It will just give them that lift and a bit of belief that, they can do something between now and the end of the season. I'm not saying, wow, Mikel Merino is now, an elite number 9 and we're going to go on and win everything. But I'm looking forward to the games, which I have to be honest and say, off the back of the Kai injury, I didn't necessarily feel that way. I did have that slight sense of dread about what's going to go wrong next.
It felt like this is too much. We've had to
kind of the straw that broke the camel's
back.
back.
A little bit. So I think in
more
that
than
sense,
a straw, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so I think it was huge, and you could see. I think the away fans really revelled in it as well. And I think you've got to give credit to the manager. I think he played this very well. He made the right call on Merino. It was a big call. I know he didn't have a ton of options, but he went for it and it worked.
Yeah.
And I was really struck by his press conference on Friday. I thought it was a really important one because the mood had been so negative and down, understandably, among the supporters. And I really wondered how he was going to play it.
Yeah.
And I thought he played it very well. I thought he was much calmer and lighter in tone than I anticipated. maybe a bit less intense than he can sometimes be. And I think the key message from him was, one of the things that we still have in our corner is our supporters and our fans. And after a result like this, I think that feels especially true. I do think that as difficult as what we're being faced with is right now, it is a kind of us against the world situation. And
sure,
generally, when Mikel Arteta has found himself in those scenarios, he's found a way to galvanise the team and galvanise the supporters to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question of, how we've ended up in a situation where we don't have a centre forward, is one that is perfectly valid. And I think that sort of discussion, and, you've had it, I've had it with my Arsenal friends all week, is like going back to January, all of those things. But ultimately, when the game kicks off for those 90 minutes, I think the fans are absolutely 100% behind this team, which is really important. I think it'll be important over the next few weeks as well, because we've got some tricky games. I know it's West Ham next at home, a big home game. You'd expect a big atmosphere. How we set up for that, we'll have to wait and see. But I think the thing I took away from the press conference on Friday was sort of how bullish he was, where he talked about, I think it was a message to the fans and to his players as well, where he said, look at what we've dealt with all season, Merino injury, Saliba injury, or Saliba sending off, Gabriel injury, Saka injury, Ben White injury, Tomiyasu injury, Kai Havertz, Martinelli, red cards, 10 men, and look at what we've done despite that. And I think that message was really important, because it wasn't a case of like, well, yeah, we're fucked. after the Havertz thing, which was my reaction when I saw that. I wrote about it on the blog during the week when we got the Havertz news. I was like, well, we're fucked. I really felt like that. I didn't think it was impossible that we could go and win this game, and it's not impossible that we can go on a bit of a run and hopefully get some players back soon. But my gut feeling was, right, that's it. It's like too much. There's only so much you can deal with throughout a season. And that's why I think it was important that he sent that message in his press conference. And I think it was so important that the players that we had were able to dig deep on a day where we didn't really play very well. I think that's the bottom line here. We didn't really play that well against a team that is in the bottom three and has been struggling and has only won one game in their last 10, which was against Tottenham, by the way. We didn't play that well, but we still found a way to win. And I think in terms of giving this group confidence that they can go and do that again against West Ham or whoever else we're going to be playing in the next few weeks, I think it was huge, really huge win, this.
Definitely. I think and hope we'll see a better performance against West Ham as a consequence. And I don't mean to sort of dismiss the recruitment issue at all. Like, I totally understand the grievances that people have. I have some of my own around that. But it is nice to be able to talk about a game not through that prism.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure it will rear its head again at some point between now and the end of the season. That feels absolutely inevitable, and I understand all the reasons. But I think it would become very tiring if every podcast was that.
Oh, no, I agree 100%. And ultimately, what's done is done in that sense.
Yeah.
The only thing that we can do, or the Mikel Arteta and the players and the team can do, is deal with the challenge. Have they made life more difficult for themselves, or have the club made life more difficult for themselves? Absolutely. But I think you're right. It's done. People will make their own judgment on that between now and the end of the season. Who knows? But all they can do is go out and win games. And score goals. I know we'll have a question or two maybe about Ethan Nwaneri in part two, but just to sort of finish off part one, was this the sort of not coming of age performance, but was this the performance from Ethan Nwaneri that people will look back on and say that was the day he sort of announced himself? And I realize I'm saying that after, he scored 6-7 goals already this season from a limited amount of minutes, but just as a performance where pretty much everybody outside of Arsenal will have woken up to what a talent we have on our hands.
Yeah, I think it might well have been the game at the Amex, the Brighton game, had he not been injured that day. You know, he scored a great goal. And I think if he'd stayed on the pitch and stayed in the team, that might have been the moment. But this could be it too. I mean, what's amazing about Ethan is that he seems to announce himself every time he steps onto the pitch. Mm-hmm. There's a moment of quality. And it was true even right at the start of the season when he came on as a substitute and transformed
against Leicester,
lifted the energy. Exactly. Yeah. Leicester. I was thinking, am I getting confused? It's Leicester. When he came on there and just lifted the whole stadium. So yeah, I sort of think we, as a fan base, we don't really need much more convincing of this guy's talent. It is absolutely evident to anyone who has even a shred of knowledge about football. But it's noticeable that the rest of the football world is sort of sitting up and taking notice at this point in time.
Yeah.
And that will bring its challenges for him. Sure. I'm sure. But he looks incredibly prepared to face them.
Yeah, I agree. It's sort of like Lewis Skelly in that regard, where I think part of what's so impressive is the mindset, the personality, the belief that they have at such a young age to come into, you know, a very established team and a very, very good team as well. I'm not saying it's better, worse, or anything else, but I think there's maybe a difference between the way Bukayo Saka made his breakthrough and the way these two guys have made their breakthrough, right? So Saka came into a team that was at a low ebb, and there was an opportunity for him to come in and establish himself, and he did that with brilliant performances and his quality. But what Nwaneri and Lewis Skelly are doing is coming into a team that challenged for the title 2 years in a row. That last season came within 2 points of winning the title, and here they are, and they're performing, and they don't look out of place. And I think something Arteta has mentioned a couple of times is that the other players trust them. The other players believe in what they can do and their quality. And that's not always the case with young players, is it, when they come in? That sometimes, and we've seen it, where there might be an easier passing option to the less established player, but that player hasn't yet garnered the trust of his teammates. And so the more experienced player will play the more difficult pass, sometimes just eschew the option of the younger player. Whereas with Nwaneri and Lewis Skelly, they give them the ball in all kinds of situations, and they trust in their ability to retain possession and produce with the ball.
Yeah, and that goes back, I think it was maybe at West Ham last season when Nwaneri came on as a substitute, and afterwards Arteta said, well, the players on the bench were kind of egging me on to put him on. I mean, I think they're as excited about his talent as we are. And one really small thing that I really liked about this performance from Nwaneri was, you know, when he hit that beautiful shot that just clips off the top of the crossbar, you might expect a teenager early in their Premier League career to kind of throw their hands up or, you know, put their hands over their face and just be absolutely gutted or disappointed or frustrated. And then when you hit the post the second time, you might expect a reaction of like falling to the floor or something, some expression of disappointment. But there was almost none. Like he basically didn't blink. I think the one that hit the post, he just jogged over to take the corner.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
And with that, and in his mind, there's this thing of like, yeah, that was a great shot. Didn't hit the net, but the next one will. Yeah. And I just think that is a mark of such innate confidence in his own ability. Even the assist for Merino, you know, when Merino rises and heads that ball into the net, Nwaneri, he doesn't wheel away, you know, in euphoria. He just gives it a little finger wag of like, we got there in the end. Yeah. And I think that says something about his character and his personality that makes me think we've really got something special here.
Yes. And for the wider football world, please, Nwaneri, not Nwaneri.
Yeah, I do that time to time as well. I don't know why. It's like people calling Merino Mourinho.
Or Moreno. I've heard that a bit as well.
A lot of that around as well, yeah.
Lewis Skelly, I heard a bit, a little bit from Joe Cole, who, to be fair, did correct himself.
Did he?
Yeah, he did, but he was a bit like that.
Yeah, it's but well, listen, it's a name we'll all be getting very used to, I'm sure.
Yes, all right. We will leave it there, I think, for part one. James McNicholas. We'll be back with your questions and more in part two right after this. Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra. This is part two of the show where we answer the questions that you send to us on Blue Sky at gunnerblog.bsky.social and at arseblog.com. Also on the Arseblog Discord chat server, which you get access to if you are an Arseblog member on Patreon. James, I really enjoyed this question from Michael on Blue Sky. He's at bluemang.bsky.social and he says, "Hey, gunnerblog.bsky.social. I'm a gunner from another country. What's the honest truth about our chances this year?" I just really like that question.
Well, welcome, and good to connect with you.
The honest truth now, not the unhonest truth. The honest truth.
The honest truth is that our chances of what, I suppose, of winning something.
No, just
it will be difficult. It will be difficult, but we do have a chance. I think that is the honest truth.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this from David Sweet Chili Dang, who said, "Goodly morning, gents. Since the arrival of Merino as our new number 9, do you think the club will now turn their focus towards getting a new left back in the summer instead of a striker?"
I did see quite a few of those as well.
Quite a few of those around.
Quite a few of those.
By the way, having just finished part one saying we mustn't bang on about recruitment every episode.
Sure.
the success of Merino kind of makes me think even more that Arsenal should have just bought a forward. Like, doesn't the success of Merino demonstrate that a bloke, like a tall bloke,
a tall bloke, yeah,
would have been quite good?
Yeah, we're back to the tall bloke thing again.
I know it sounds like I'm being sort of stupid, but you don't have to be R9 to have success in the Premier League. There's a bloke called Beto at Everton who, as far as I can tell, is just a bloke. He's doing ever so well.
Just a bloke. I mean,
Do you know what I mean, though?
No, I know that argument. Like, we don't want just anybody. If we go out to the market, we want to bring in somebody who can really, lift the level. Yeah. It can't be just anybody. But
what if it was just a 6'3" guy?
Yeah.
I know Merino's got qualities and attributes and all sorts of, and he played really well, did really well. But it did kind of make me think, surely there was a striker like this available.
Yeah, I mean, there was a good bit of chat, wasn't there, about the repurposing of a central defender, doing the old Paul Warhurst or Dion Dublin thing. People can look those up, but Paul Warhurst was a central defender who was thrown up top for Blackburn. I think he scored 12 or 15 goals in the second half of one season, something like that. Maybe Merino is our Paul Warhurst. Maybe.
Well, it is spooky, isn't it, how he's sort of following the Kai Havertz trajectory.
Yes. So we look forward to him. Oh, no, I won't say it out loud. Definitely not, because I like...
Don't speak that into existence.
I'm touching all the wood, all right? I won't speak that into existence. All right, what about Raheem Sterling then? We had a lot of questions about him, and I think certainly his performance on Saturday and throughout this season has led to a lot of questions. So King Thierry on the Discord says, "I'm interested to know your thoughts on what communications between Arteta and Sterling must be like. They must now both realise that Sterling is no longer at the required level, but given the numbers, he literally still needs to play minutes this season. How does Arteta extract the most from him? And how does Sterling continue to show up when his body is no longer up to it?" So I think it would be just too easy for us to sit here and rip into Raheem Sterling's performance on Saturday. I don't think it was good. I don't think anybody thinks it was good. But there is a there is maybe a wider discussion to be had about how we deal with this now, because options are just so limited.
Yeah. The big caveat that I'll put on this is what I'm now calling my Gabriel Jesus rule, where I was watching a player in Gabriel Jesus who I thought physically was like done. And I talked about him in those terms of like, he is beyond the point of sort of rescuing. And I was kind of proven wrong on that. I mean, I know that he's had the injury since then, but he did actually have a little period where he burst into life and contributed quite significantly to the first team. And so I'm loath to write off entirely another player of a similar age, because I've seen evidence this season of how foolish that can make you look. That said, there's no sign of that currently for Raheem Sterling, and his level of performance at the moment is very low. Like, I was quite... I think we've said in the past that like watching him is a little bit sad.
Yeah.
And I really felt like that on Saturday. I really felt like, wow, this is a guy who is not at the level he was previously, and also is completely, on top of that, completely bereft of confidence.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of a perfect storm, or a very imperfect storm, shall we say.
Yeah, there was another question from Bryn52, said Sterling or Willian. I don't feel the antipathy for Sterling as I did for Willian. I just feel sad for him. I don't know why there is that difference in feeling. I guess if I can answer that from my perspective, I don't think Sterling was not trying. I don't think he was unwilling. I don't think he just sort of went through the motions. He tried to do things. He tried to do all the things that he has done throughout his career, but just can't do them, or couldn't do them, and hasn't really been able to do them at any point since he arrived. So that's why I feel just kind of a bit sad for him. You know, yeah. If a guy isn't trying, he deserves all the criticism in the world. No two ways about it. If you don't give 100%, you know, I think fans are absolutely right to criticize those performances. If you see a player who is trying and who just can't do it, then that's a different thing for me, anyway.
It is, and I think, it's funny because, you know, I haven't followed his career that closely in recent years, but he definitely had a couple of spells at Chelsea where he was productive. I think he was up and down there, but you know, there were some ups. And at Arsenal, that just hasn't happened as yet at all. In terms of like what Arsenal do about it, I mean, there's kind of only one thing to do, which is that, and unfortunately, it's the only option at Arsenal's disposal. He is going to continue to be involved. And so I guess Mikel Arteta is hoping that at some point something clicks for him. I mean, Willian, again, is another one who appeared a busted flush, right? And actually is still playing and has just returned to the Premier League with Fulham. Granted, not at the level he was with Chelsea, but he found a level of performance that was effective in the Premier League.
Because he started trying again.
Well, yeah, I mean, but I do think there's more to it than that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm being a little facetious. But.
Yeah, sure. I think... So I haven't completely given up on the idea that Sterling might find something, but the more time goes on, without any indications that might happen. I mean, if I think about when he first came into the team, I actually think he was a bit more encouraging at that point in time. You know, he had a lot of he carried a lot of threat, even if the execution wasn't always great. Once he got into the positions. Granted, a lot of those performances were against lower league opposition or what have you in the Carabao Cup. Yeah, I don't know. What's Arteta's communication with him? I imagine very positive, because he's got no choice. He needs this player and he needs to get something out of him. And as for Sterling, does he believe that he's finished? I don't think so. I don't know if like an elite athlete with the mentality that they have would sort of arrive at that conclusion that quickly. I think he'd surely still have hopes and belief that he can, if not quite turn this around, certainly perform at a better level than he is currently.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's impossible that he could contribute or find a little bit of form or something that approaches the kind of ability he used to have. I think it's unlikely, though. I think the difference for me as well between the Jesus and Sterling situation is age. I think there's a few years between them, you know. Sterling is 30 and has been playing since he was, 17? So I think, you know, we've seen it before with players who start very early. They can fall off the cliff very quickly. And I think that's kind of where we are. I mean, the question is, you know, do you start Sterling in the next game? With questions like that as well. Let me see if I can find one. From OPW Tucker on Blue Sky, he says, is there an argument for using Merino in the final 20 minutes as a last resort against tired defences, as he's really our only game changer? Or do you see us picking him from the start as a short-term solution? I think I said to you on Saturday, despite the fact we only have 3 attackers, Sterling has basically played himself out of the starting 11 with that performance. But is it better maybe to start him? Because you're more likely to get something from Merino off the bench than Sterling off the bench.
Yeah.
It's a tough one,
isn't it? This question from Tola, who said, "Good morning, gents. Am I the only one that thinks we have to start Sterling again in the next game? Although I agree his performance was truly terrible, I think dropping him essentially removes any small chance of him making a useful contribution for the rest of the season. I think the West Ham fixture presents him with a chance to redeem himself. Some contribution might provide a confidence boost. For the greater long-term good, it feels worth giving him one more start. And if it doesn't work, we always have Merino from the bench." I can actually see the logic there. And I feel like Merino is probably a more impactful substitute than Sterling. And something Arteta, again, spoke about pre-game, was considering that aspect of it. You know, it's not just picking his starting 11, it's who does he believe can impact the match.
I mean, if you think about it, West Ham are a pretty big side.
That would make me lean towards Merino, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. Do you give yourself a better chance of winning the game from the start with Merino than Sterling? Absolutely you do. If you get to 70 minutes and it's 0-0, do you then have a realistic option to bring off the bench to change the game? I don't know that you do that. I don't know that you do either. So it's a really Sterling, tough one, yeah.
We've seen historically Arteta doesn't like to use him when defending a slender lead, for example.
No.
So if you start with him on the bench, there's certainly a scenario where, let's say it's 1-0. I don't know. I mean, I guess he would have to. But I think he would do it reluctantly, put him on for one of his other forwards. Weighing it all up, I'd still be inclined to go towards Merino. For me, it is that point about the physical dimension of the team. I think as a team, we're set up to score certain types of goals. And one of those goals is clipped across to the back post. We score it a lot. And I think just being able to kind of lean into those established patterns of play is really valuable. I also think set pieces, you know, like he replaces Kai Havertz's threat on set pieces, which has been an important weapon for us and maybe a very important weapon between now and the end of the season. And I think for Sterling, it's baby steps, right? Like if he can come on against West Ham and have a decent 15 minutes, maybe that's psychologically better for him than starting a game with everyone in the stadium knowing that after an hour he's probably going to come off. And that brings its own kind of pressure I think, starting the game and the expectation you'll be subbed off and having to produce something in that time. I genuinely am. I'm trying to think of a player who's been in this Sterling position before and sort of recovered it. And it's not easy. You know, I cited Jesus. You make a fair point on the age, but yeah, I'm not particularly optimistic for him right now, and I'm gutted about that because we need him.
Yeah.
But there's no point piling on him, and I think, and in fairness to the Arsenal fan, that isn't what I'm seeing or reading.
I think there's frustration with the performances. I think most people can recognise this isn't just, a guy going through the motions and not caring. I think as I said, I think he's trying. I think he is trying to do all the things that made him an effective Premier League footballer for so many years. It's just that the legs aren't there. They're just not there.
But, yeah, and that's the hardest thing to watch, is him sort of standing up his man. And I felt like Joe Cole was trying to gaslight me on the commentary. Kept talking up Raheem Sterling as a player that I'm just not sure he is anymore. And seeing him sort of stand up a defender but then not have the confidence to go beyond them, to take on his man.
Or if he does, just get tackled and lose the ball.
Yeah. It is a sort of a humbling experience for him. Let's see. If Mikel Arteta can get a tune out of him, it will be another great feather in his coaching cap, I think. A lot of topics there. Okay, we've got to do this. We get questions about this every week. It's the new best starting 11 question, but I think we've got to address it. Josh W. Bennett says, surprisingly good morning, gents. Where do you think the longer-term future of Nwaneri lies? Assuming he's not going to usurp Saka on the right, but equally won't always be happy to play second fiddle, is there a chance we see him take on the left-wing position and make it his own? But we get a lot of questions about what are we going to do with Nwaneri and Saka? Yeah,
there's one here as well from James, who's at f1james.bsky.social. When Saka comes back from injury, hopefully very soon, is there a way in which Arteta could field Saka, Odegaard and Nwaneri in the same starting 11? He's playing at such a high level, it feels like he has to start at this point in time. It's a great question. I don't really know the answer, other than talent usually dictates team selection, doesn't it? And when you have that kind of talent available to you, you have to find a way to get it all in the team at the same time. So whether that's Nwaneri playing as the left 8 or Odegaard shifting across to be the left 8 with Nwaneri close to Saka, I don't know. Nwaneri left wing, maybe, I don't know. Nwaneri number 9. That's what Arteta spoke a little bit about as well. But, I think you make a good point about how we score certain types of goals and the physical profile of players. What I think is quite interesting is that we've seen in the last couple of years, Mikel Arteta has a real preference for the physical kind of player that he wants in the left 8 position, right?
Yeah.
So it was Granit Xhaka, tall, left-footed. He brought Kai Havertz in, tall, left-footed. He's played Declan Rice there, who is physically very similar to those guys, but obviously right-footed. And he brought Mikel Merino in during the summer, ostensibly to be an option there as well, tall, left-footed. Is Arteta going to have to fight his own preferences to get Nwaneri into this team on a regular basis? He might,
Yeah.
I think that's going to be an interesting aspect of this. I think the very least you could say is that we don't need to have the conversation about Arsenal going out in the summer and buying a player who can take some of the burden off Bukayo Saka. Because
that's it.
We've got him now.
It's very Arsenal fan of us to sort of spend years worrying about not having a backup for Bukayo Saka, make him one in our academy and now be slightly anxious about how that's going to play out. It's peak Arsenal.
Yeah.
And I don't think this is a problem. Like, this ain't keeping me up at night. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is a great situation. And I don't think it's something that will come to a head or need to be addressed for a little bit of time. Like, as well as Ethan is doing right now, I'm not sure that it's ideal at 17 years old for him to be an automatic starter for every single game. Mm-hmm. I think Arteta, in an ideal world, would be being a bit more measured in terms of his introduction. In the longer term, I do think that you're right. Arteta might have to shift some of his principles about the midfield. I think you're probably looking at trying to get Nwaneri and Odegaard in the same midfield. I don't think that's particularly imminent. I mean, the fact that Arsenal are pursuing the signing of Martin Zubimendi, for example, would appear to be at odds with that, because you've got a £100 million midfielder in Declan Rice that you've got to get in somewhere as well, which really does only leave one starting spot in that midfield. But Nwaneri in the short term might enable us to rest Bukayo Saka or rest Martin Odegaard, rotate them in and out, come off after an hour. Like, for the next year of his career, that could be fine. I don't know, maybe not, but I think that's very plausible.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think, in 12 months' time, we could be having a very different conversation about Nwaneri and where we see him and what his role in the team will be. Like, I don't think it's going to be long, really, before he is a regular starter, simply because of how good he is. That's what happens when a talent like that emerges. But it means you're going to have to shift some things around. It might mean the end for somebody else, It might be somebody else's role that gets reduced in order for Nwaneri to come through. But for now,
think one thing that has occurred to me is, we keep talking about that position where Ethan Nwaneri is so deadly, right? Corner of the box, just to the right-hand side. It does feel like that is developing and emerging at a time where Martin Odegaard, his productivity in terms of shots and goals from that sort of area is reducing. And I wonder if, that may be instructive in some way. Like, may Martin Odegaard shift over to the left-hand side of midfield? Or I noticed against Leicester, he was in a lot of quite deep positions at times.
Yes. I think this is I think this is a really interesting discussion, actually, about Odegaard and his end product. And I could be completely wrong about this, but I don't feel like we're getting him into the positions that he used to get into to score goals as much as we used to. You can say his end product has dropped off. Absolutely, it has. Was it last season before, he got 15 goals in the Premier League? Nowhere near that again. And I think there have been a couple of moments this season where, he's fluffed his lines in front of goal. But if you think about where he used to score quite a lot of goals from, it's sort of like between the D and the penalty spot, right?
Yeah.
Where he got into there, we'd work the ball, usually down the left-hand side, and the ball comes in and Odegaard is there to apply the finish. I don't feel like we as a team are set up in that way, whether it's to do with, the injuries we've had or whatever else. I fully accept that the Odegaard numbers are down, but I don't think the Odegaard chances are anywhere near as good as they used to be.
That's a fair point. And I've not got the numbers in front of me. I'm sure some of you know them very well. I do sometimes feel like his role is evolving, and that I mentioned him being in deeper positions. I am noticing that increasingly. But then he's very, very good on the pressing front in the opponent's half. And when Saka's back, I'm sure we'll be loving watching his combination play with Odegaard. So it's a little bit of a puzzle for Arteta, but I think it's a problem that he'll be very happy to have.
Sure.
If that makes any sense.
Sure.
Over to you.
Over to me, is it? Okay. Okay, Doc Menace, who's at Shakistan on the Discord. He says, good morning. Despite the gloomy atmosphere around the club of late, this win over Leicester marks 15 games unbeaten in the league, our longest unbeaten run since 2011. Does this prove that Arteta's build from the back strategy has actually paid off?
I don't know, but I think it's commendable. Very commendable. I mean, we had another question from Shatner's Bassoon, which was, do you think the understandable criticism of Arteta and the club in general for how we've built the squad has taken attention away from the job he has done purely as a coach? I do think when you look at the other clubs who've been beset by injuries this season, I mean, our neighbours, for one of them, Spurs, it has had a really severe impact on their campaign. And yet, when you look at where Arsenal are at, chasing top spot in the Premier League, qualified, finished third in the Champions League, reached a semi-final in the Carabao Cup. We have sustained a level of performance, which I think is quite impressive.
I agree.
I think you have to separate the sort of recruitment stuff from the coaching stuff. And I think on the coaching front, Arsenal are in very, very good hands. I think Arteta's done a good job considering the limitations he's been working with.
Yeah, I think it's very impressive. 15 games unbeaten. We've had all these challenges. I don't want to go into them all again, and everybody's probably bored of hearing about them. But you have to admit that they've been there, and they have been things that we've had to overcome. And, the consistency that we can produce these days is a testament to the manager and the quality of the players as well, and their understanding of what it is they need to do. So it is worth noting.
Is it vindication for the sort of building from the back and the level of investment in the defence?
Does that only come if you invest in the forward line to sort of put the cherry on top of the icing of that particular cake?
Yeah.
You won't convince everybody, I guess. I mean, I have to say, from just in my own head, the way I think about the game and the way I think about how you effectively build a team, I think I would do it similarly. Like you can have all the attacking talent in the world, but if you've got a crap defense, you're not going to win anything, really, are you? And even
this is why, guys, when the managerial position comes up, it should be me, not Andrew. I'll buy you shiny attackers. I promise.
I'm not saying I wouldn't buy the attackers. I'm saying that if I was building a team, I would focus on being strong at the back, and then use that as the platform.
My manifesto is no more left backs, no more goalkeepers. That's what I'm running for manager on. I take your point. And
less left backs, more Arshavins. That's your your campaign.
I'm going to sign Andre Arshavin now. That's my plan.
Right.
Just appeal to nostalgia. He's 43. I think he could really fit in.
Make Arshavin great again. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's a lot of historic precedent for teams building from the back and that proving successful. I suppose that the criticism, in as far as it exists, is maybe that Arsenal haven't quite got the balance quite right.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
I think that's perfectly fair.
I don't think anyone's saying the whole philosophy and approach is wrong. I think it's fine-tuning and sort of slight question of balance.
Mm-hmm.
And Arsenal are so close. That's the thing. They remain so close to getting it right. I mean, arguably, I think our downfall in the Premier League this season, he says, as we sit in second, has been maybe drawing too many games. And I think maybe that's where that sort of squad balance might come into play a little bit. We have the solidity to go unbeaten and to not lose games, but it's just sometimes finding that winning edge, I think, where we suffer. We obviously did it on Saturday, which was great. But I do think Arteta has done really well. And I think the consistency of performance, I don't mean in terms of this recent run, I mean across 3 seasons. Like, everyone will be really pissed off and disappointed if we don't win the league at the end of the season, even if they'll understand all the reasons. But you take a step back from it, to be in the top 2 consistently and in another title race and title challenge again.
Sure.
That is a marker of something. I know it's not going to satisfy everyone. But
no, I get it. But this is where we all wanted to be, with the understanding that winning a title in this particular era is really fucking hard.
Yeah.
But we wanted to be challengers. We wanted to be good. We didn't want to be a pushover. We didn't want to be the sort of lightweight Arsenal that got kicked around and pushed around and bullied. We're not that anymore. There's a lot to like and love about this team and these players. I know we have some individual criticisms of guys here and there, but I think by and large, this is the most popular group of players that I can remember for a long time.
Yeah. And winning a title is hard, but dusting yourself off and competing for one, having narrowly missed out, is also very, very hard. Yeah. And we've shown a capacity to do that I think the manager deserves some credit for. Okay, speaking of titles and competing and all that, Saka Potatoes on the Discord says, "Goodly morning. Do you think that Liverpool's next 3 fixtures, and especially the next 2, are the now or never fixtures for them to drop points in? I personally think they need to lose one and draw one of those 3 games, taking the gap down to 2 points if we win ours." What do you think?
Yes, I wrote about this a bit on the blog this morning, where I think the next week or 10 days for Liverpool is pretty pivotal in the title race. Away to Villa
on Wednesday night,
away to Man City on Sunday, and then they have Newcastle. Newcastle, by the way, will just capitulate like the absolute twats that they are. Because I watched Newcastle against Man City on Saturday. They never play like that against us. And I realize that's our problem, right? But, it's a sort of irrational moan. They just sort of, have some goals, why don't you?
Maybe we should be glad that they've played Man City back into some form, given that
maybe so.
Host Liverpool.
Maybe so. But yeah, when you look at those fixtures, and in particular what Liverpool have got left in the season, you are looking at them maybe dropping. Even a couple of draws in those games would be really, really good for us if we can win our games. The onus is on us, obviously, to keep winning, but those are certainly more challenging fixtures than Liverpool have got for most of the rest of the season, So, yeah, I think it could be a really big week. It's either all over or it's blown wide open again,
So you think if Liverpool come through this, you think that's that, do you?
I would say if Liverpool beat Villa, Man City and Newcastle, I don't know how they're going to drop points. They'll be riding the crest of a wave of confidence and belief that I think will be hard to come down from, unless they suffer with injuries like pretty much everybody else in the Premier League has suffered with injuries, and they haven't. They've had a pretty fit squad all season long, and that's been a huge benefit to them because it's given them options and helped them keep players fresh. They don't look like getting any injuries at this moment in time, and I'm not saying that out loud as a sort of a potential jinx. It's just the reality, isn't it? So I think if they win those games and they come through those games unscathed physically, I don't think we'll catch them.
Yeah, I mean, the trouble is we've got West Ham at home at the weekend. I would expect us to win that. But then middle of next week, we've got a really tough game away to Nottingham Forest.
Yeah.
3rd in the table ourselves. So it's not like our games are a gimme in this period.
No, not at all.
I don't think any game is going to be with the limitations that we have on us at this point in time. Yeah, I do think this is crunch time, really. I mean, I looked at Liverpool's almost from like January until now. This was kind of the period of the season where I was really expecting if they were going to drop points, this was kind of it. And this week, particularly, feels massive. 2 really hard away games.
Yeah.
I think City showed some signs of life, didn't they, against Newcastle? And Marmoush looks a threat.
I mean,
especially when you don't chase him or mark him.
Yeah. City have? They do, don't they?
They've got Madrid though, haven't they?
They've got a Real Madrid trip on Wednesday before this game against Liverpool, so it's not like they have a free week or an easy week either. So
no. Did you see Unai Emery's post-match interview?
I didn't.
Oh, he was very touchy.
Was this on Match of the Day or?
I think it was with Sky.
Right.
But he really took issue with a line of questioning. They drew, didn't they, at the weekend?
Yeah, against Ipswich. 10-man Ipswich.
Yes.
What was it? What was his problem?
On the score sheet. I think he had said in a previous interview something like, the team didn't play with enough structure or something like that. And the reporter sort of said, so, Unai, you thought the team didn't play with enough structure today? And he was just like, no, that isn't what I think. You don't know, do you? And he was very, very cross.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean, I hope whatever that angst is, it leads to a uplifting performance for the visit of Liverpool. I mean, look, shall I play out the crazy hypothetical? If Liverpool were to lose both their games this week, and we were to beat West Ham, the gap would be
4 points.
4 points with Arsenal having a game in hand.
Would we have a game in hand at that point?
Yeah, we would. We're currently level on games, and Liverpool play twice in the league this week.
They played their game in hand. That was the Merseyside derby. Yeah.
We would make that up on Wednesday against Nottingham Forest. I think the reason they're playing midweek this week is because
the cup final.
They have the Carabao Cup final. Yeah. Hopefully, once they win that, their eyes will go off the league title. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they'll just be satisfied by.
It's all about the Carabao. We need to persuade them of the importance of the Carabao.
Any ideas?
No. I do think it's crunch time, right?
Yes. It's a big, big week. All we can do is win our games and hope for the best elsewhere. But if Liverpool do come through those games,
I'll take my hat off to them. There's nothing else to say or do, really.
Well, I guess so.
They weren't. I have to say, they weren't. But did you watch them yesterday?
Yeah, I was sort of half watching.
They weren't particularly convincing.
No, they weren't. Wolves had some moments.
Had the better of the second half.
They did. Maybe just a little bit of pressure, but look, they got it done. They got it over the line, which is all you can ask. But
they're playing a lot of games, Liverpool as well. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I've just noticed, Andrew, my microphone has an orange light on it, not a green light. What does that mean?
Prepare to slow down.
Okay.
Yeah. I think.
As long as it's working, as long as you can hear me.
I can hear you all right. It's no problem.
Loud and clear.
I think we should leave it there.
Yeah, we've covered it all.
We've done it all. There is a lot of football on this week, not involving Arsenal. We have the rare luxury of a sort of a week between our games, and maybe
Bye again?
No, let's not.
Never again.
Never again. That didn't really work out particularly well this time around. Maybe they had a nice time, but Kai Havertz won't be thanking them for that trip. Probably, it was because of the sitting on an airplane for 7 hours. His hamstring got tight.
Maybe blocking a shot.
Yeah, that's what he said, yeah.
Too busy working on the defence as usual.
Wouldn't happen with Arshavin in the squad, that's for sure.
No shots blocked.
No shots blocked. 0 shots blocked. All right. Okay, well, look, we will leave it there. You can join us a bit later this afternoon over on Patreon. We'll have an episode of The 30, looking back at all the weekend's Premier League action. Myself and Phil Costa will do that for you if you fancy joining. It's patreon.com/Arseblog. For now, though, we'll leave it there and we will catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.